Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the briefing room. Yes, indeed, my name is Eric Cavanaugh. I will be your moderator for today's event in which we're going to dig into one of the hottest topics happening out there in the world of information management. We're calling it the age of data. That's exactly right. So the topic is the bigger picture, new opportunities for the modern enterprise. And boy, the opportunities are virtually endless these days, folks. Let me just go ahead and dive right in. There's a slide about yours truly and enough about me. So the mission, as many of you now know in the briefing room, is to reveal the essential characteristics of enterprise software. We do that by pairing innovative vendors with independent analysts and exposing a live analyst briefing. So the analyst and vendor do not coordinate before the show, and that is part of the magic. We want to have an organic conversation, the kind which occurs when an analyst takes a briefing from a vendor doing new things. And boy, if there is a vendor doing new and interesting things in the world today, we have them on the line right now. Actyon, formerly Ingress, which turned around in almost no time and made 3 huge acquisitions, including Pervasive Software and most recently PairExcel, and I think Vivissimo was another acquisition. So these guys have been on a tear. And what's really interesting is that when you take a step back and look at what they've pulled together, it's a pretty formidable stack, folks. It can now scale up and scale out. It does data integration. It does analytics. There are all kinds of things coming together, and we're going to learn about them in today's show. So moving right along, we cover different topics each month in the briefing room, really for your benefit in the audience, because we want you to get apples-to-apples comparisons of what's available in the marketplace. So this month is integration. Next month is database, then cloud, and high-performance analytics after that. So stand by for all those things. Now let's talk about integration very quickly. If you're a bit bewildered by the amount of activity out there in the marketplace, don't feel bad, because even those of us who have been following this industry for years realize that we are undergoing a tectonic shift right now. The number of things that are changing and the manner in which they're changing is so significant that if you closed your eyes for about 3 to 4 months, you might not even recognize the world around you when you open your eyes up again. But the fact is there is all this data, which has been around for a while, but we really haven't been able to use it, machine-generated data. A lot of people refer to it as data exhaust. If you think about all the devices that are out there right now, whether it's cell phones or medical devices or machinery in warehouses and manufacturing plants, medical machinery, all the different devices that are out there, well, they're always spitting out all these little bits of information. A lot of times they're used in some operational context, but then they just typically have been discarded. Well, now you don't have to discard that stuff. You can actually use a lot of that stuff to make better decisions in your organization. The question is, how do you wrangle it? How do you get a handle on all this stuff? There's so much of it. Of course, that's the concept of big data that we've heard so much about. A lot of it coming from social media, a lot of it coming from RFID chips. You heard me mention mobile, et cetera. Lots and lots of stuff going on, and we're trying to get a handle on it. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what is possible. What are the kinds of data that you can bring in together to coalesce, to synthesize, to analyze, to achieve what many people are now referring to as data science. That's what we're going to talk about today. So the analyst is our very own Dr. Robin Bloor. I'm actually at his home office in North Austin today due to some internet connectivity problems down in the typical studio in Wimberley, Texas. So I'm a bit out of sorts here. But anyway, Actyon. So Actyon is a database, vector-wise, Ingress and Versant. That's the company I was thinking of. And software development company. It offers Actyon apps, lightweight applications that can automate business actions triggered by real-time changes. And of course, they offered Actyon Data Cloud, an infrastructure as a service, integration platform as a service, I should say, solution. And recently acquired Pervasive Software and PairExcel. And of course, as many of you know from a recent briefing room, PairExcel is part of that Redshift Amazon data warehousing and the cloud offering. So boy, things are changing. There is Lance Feck, Vice President and GM, Integration Products for Actyon Corp., responsible for thought leadership and execution strategy for integration products delivered via direct and indirect channels. And I think one thing you'll learn today is that Pervasive, before getting acquired by Actyon, had done an amazing job with cloud integration. They're really a leader in the whole space of cloud integration. So with that, I'm going to push the first slide here. And Rebecca, if you would hand control of the WebEx. Actually, I think I can do it to Lance myself. And I'm making you the presenter now, Lance. And with that, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the introduction. We're excited, as you can imagine. we see the opportunity. We feel like we've been positioned. We're very confident in how we've been positioned. But as our combined offering gets even stronger with the acquisition and joining Actyon, that brings both the market shifting to us and us being able to provide better to the market. It puts us in a pretty good spot, a spot to be excited about. And so with that, I'll open with a $1 trillion number just to get people awake this afternoon and talk about the opportunity that's sitting out there as it relates to data and what's there for the taking for those who think about it and those who appreciate and understand the amount of data that's being produced, as you mentioned, Eric, as we speak, all over the world by people and machines, et cetera. And those who figure it out and figure out how to combine that data and find value have, as McKinsey says, $2 trillion worth of value to go get. There's for the taking. So you say, well, when you put that type of number up, then why isn't everybody just doing it? And why isn't everybody executing and harnessing it? And I think, I can't speak for everybody in their reasons, but from my experience, it would be, is the data too big? Do they feel like it's too big of a problem? When you think about sensors and machine-generated data that are taking snapshots of data, sub-second, and you think about something like a jetliner crossing the ocean and the amount of terabytes of data that are stored from all of the different systems, well, that's one thing. It's another thing to know how many jets are in the air at any given time, and then it's another thing to figure out how you're going to actually be able to process that and make any sense of it in a reasonable amount of time. And then multiply that times, that's just one scenario in one industry, multiply that times every industry, and it's a lot of data that most would tell you just spills out on the floor that nobody ever actually does anything with. So there's part of where the $2 trillion goes. The other is, are you able to handle it? Is it moving too fast? If you can't do anything with it fast enough, your days or weeks or months behind being able to take action on that data, then is it good data just meaningless because you're not there fast enough to do something about it? Or is it too, in the whole volume and velocity and variety spectrum, is there just too much coming from too many different places and you just don't know where to begin? So these are the things that we'll be talking about today, are how Actyon is able to help and understand the market and be able to help address the size and the volume and the velocity and the variety of data that's coming for our customers today. So really briefly, let's talk about Actyon as a company. Again, the coming together of various companies gives us a great deal of breadth in size as well as geographical coverage as across direct and indirect channels with various offices to cover follow the sun support, as well as handle so many different languages that from so many different markets, growing markets out there that are producing this data and leveraging it for their business. So I guess let's dive into what we mean by data, and I'll start with connect, analyze, and act as the themes that you'll see multiple times through this process. And I'll start from the far left, mostly talking about the variety of the data. And if you think about data in the standard traditional forms, it's coming from different systems and applications and databases that people have created for their business over time, data warehouses perhaps, and this is data that's come from your trading partners or from your inventory or your customers, et cetera. And you know this about your business, and people have been doing analytics on that data for some period of time. Whether or not they've been doing a good job or bad is debatable, but that data has been known and been out there. But what's happening now is that humans, both through social, because they go on and enter something about themselves, or just walking around their phone, what they've allowed people to know about themselves and approved to send information out about where they are and what they're doing and what they've checked into and what they've bought is an enormous amount of data that's flooding in from everywhere. So humans, whether they know it or not, are producing massive amounts of data, and then add that to the sensors and the machine-generated data that's just churning out data at rates that we've never even imagined before. So the first part is how do you handle? Well, I guess the first part is, do you understand the data and all of the different places that it's potentially coming from? The second is, are you able to capture that data, to connect to that data? And if you take the flow left to right, really think about it in business terms. Are you able to take that data and to discovery through the process of analyzing and then taking action? Or even more on the business level, do you take that data through, do some type of transformation, aggregation, cleansing, analytics, etc., and are you able to process that in a fast enough way to actually take action, meaningful action, I should say, on the data? And you can't just do this on your own. You have to build it on a platform of highly elastic, modern platforms, leveraging cloud where you can, leveraging various enterprise stacks where you can. And the little chiclets that you'll see throughout are some of the pieces that we'll talk about a little bit today as to this combined story, this Actyon piece that will allow you to do both the capturing, collection, connection of the data, do the fastest reporting possible in the world, scaling both up and out, to be able to give you meaningful information at the right time, and then be able to take action on that data to do something to influence your business. So I'm going to start a little bit for solving for variety, which was more on the connect side of the prior slide, which is we all understand traditional ETL, and if you were to look at this slide and start from the middle bottom out, there are pieces of an enterprise stack that include hundreds of connectors and include orchestration processes that allow you to build any number of steps for validation, for matching, and for merging, for aggregation, for decision steps, for calling out to third parties, calling third party applications. And that's critical, and it has to scale, and it has to be secure, but it's just one piece. And so when you think about getting onto a call like this and you see potentially a big, heavy product push, I've tried to minimize that by just putting initials. And you saw that on the last slide. I'm not pushing a ton of different products. I want to talk more about the overall big picture. That's the name of the presentation, and how it all fits together. So it's become important to not just have a stack that has the connectivity, but think about what the market actually wants, and then be able to deliver to that. And so if you move upward from the middle to Maestro and the business analyst in the left, just left of that, what we've realized is design time, the convenience and the frictionless nature of SaaS and of business is the consumerization of IT, as I've heard some call it, is that people want to be able to get answers and work done quickly. They don't want to send it down to IT or to a custom shop that takes 2 weeks to process for a 15-minute job to be able to put some data into the system, to be able to do the analytics and or take action on that data. And so sometimes it's as simple as finance or sales or marketing or support trying to include some piece of data in a fast enough way that allows them to do something with it that afternoon, or during lunch, or within 30 minutes. And that's not the way that enterprise integration has worked. It's always worked by going to a team of people who grumble and put it in the queue, and 2 weeks later you get your information. So we have abstracted from that enterprise stack to create something called Maestro, which really white spaces a lot of the I don't want to say complexity, some of the enterprise features, it takes it to a business level, so anybody, so I could, or sales could, or marketing could do simple mapping to be able to onboard new data without complexity. And then there's a level of abstraction above that, which is application level. Some people now expect that integration or capturing data is going to be as easy as entering your email and your password. So if you think about social and linking multiple social networks together, well, people's understanding of that isn't let's go do mapping and let's figure out, you know, semantics of data, but it's rather I want to be able to put in my username and password, and I should be able to integrate multiple social platforms into one. And that is something that we accomplished today, even in business applications. Intuit and Salesforce, if you were to Google QuickBooks and Salesforce, you would find that there's bidirectional integration between those two systems, and all you need to get started is a username and password, and it will spin up 4 different clouds and integrate that data, which isn't social data, this is accounting data, and it will do so in less than 10 minutes. This was previously weeks of work, is now down to 10 minutes, and you can even try it with your own data or with sample data in, like I said, less than 10 minutes. So the type of variety that you have and the reduced friction that has to be available for the world is where we think about solving for. So if you go left of those two columns, then you'll see that it's not just about raw data, but you have to understand what it is that you're working with. Certainly, people that are pulling from social are different than people that pull from accounting, who are different from people who pull from CRM, who are different from people who pull from marketing automation, or from, you know, pricing optimization, et cetera. So understanding the semantics of that data and having a partner ecosystem around the world who can get on and quickly understand the type of challenges that particular source may cause is critical. It's not just about the tooling, if you will. So moving to the gray right 2 columns is, all right, now you have a tool that can scale, it's secure, it can abstract from the same stack into various levels of business users and business analysts. You have supporting cast of partners and end users that know how to speak that domain expertise, but how do you deploy? And one would say, well, cloud is the way everybody's deploying, and that's true. Most of our growth comes because of cloud as the catalyst, but we still find that the majority of the data that needs to be pulled is coming from some on-premise system. So what we find is that hybrid, the middle box in that column, is actually the preferred, the most popular portion of our growth today. And that is, how can I design and build the mapping in the cloud? How can I manage in the cloud? How can I drop a small agent out that allows me to extract from whatever those sources are, whether they're applications or data warehouses, et cetera, and process that? Maybe, you know, maybe it's something that you run all completely on-prem, but you can even do the design on the cloud and launch it all on-prem. So hybrid is the most common today. And then moving to the furthest right, you have the tools, you have the deployment model. You can do one or the other, or some hybrid of both. But how do you enable your customers? And we have found that you need a services team that's sophisticated, but you also need worldwide systems integrators that can help you at any time, at any scale. We also have a marketplace that will deliver. Called Galaxy, that will help you deliver one of 3 things: either add-ons or extensions for something that you're trying to build. Maybe you need a connector. Maybe you need a prepackaged map or a process. Maybe you go out there to our Galaxy marketplace and buy it. Maybe you go sell one. Maybe you go see what people are needing and you go build it and sell it for profit. So maybe you give it away for free for the greater good of the world. But the marketplace there allows people from all over the world to build and share different pieces of the connectivity 24/7. And then finally, community-wise, there's the marketplace, which allows you to buy and sell and trade, but you also need to be able to ask questions. And we found that since we implemented community for people around the world to help one another, our support calls and backlog have dropped by 50%. So it's working. We've been around and doing this for a very long time, and we understand that 50% means customers are getting their answers real time without having to call in and go through traditional support queues. So if you look at this in more of a flow, the integration stack you saw before was more geared up towards the variety, but let's talk about volume and velocity. So assuming that left piece is capturing the data from various sources, how are you able to process that? And we have something called Rush Analytics built on a Data Rush platform, which allows for the fastest processing and transformation and loading of data in the world. So most traditional loaders, most traditional even ETL has been geared more not for today's hardware, but rather for yesterday's hardware. And so the bottleneck oftentimes isn't that the machines, which all commodity machines today have are pretty significant, but rather that the processing wasn't built to automatically take advantage and leverage multiple cores. Data Rush is built such that you can take any amount of data and load it using Data Rush, and it will maximize in a pretty almost linear way every single core on the machine that you're using to process it, or on the clusters that you're using to process and load that. So if you think of ETL and where the T is significant, where the T coming from machine or social or even just massive data sets from various databases is significant, the Data Rush engine is able to leverage and process and transform more data faster than anything, which is critical in the analytics space if you're trying to make real-time decisions or very fast decisions where the next day or even a few hours won't help. Then the ability to load in seconds instead of hours or instead of overnight is absolutely critical, and goes back to the first slide where we talked about data being available but spilling out on the floor and or not making it to a place where you can take action on it in a reasonable amount of time to impact your business outcomes positively. So Rush Analytics is a critical piece of the overall equation, and then it gets to the fun stuff. Then it gets to VectorWise and Pair Excel, where you're able to, either through scaling up or out, be able to report on that data in record time. And so if you look at the world today and the amount of data that's coming through and the variety, and Rush Analytics loads it extremely fast, well, it's only useful for most businesses if you're able to get answers about that data in a reasonable amount of time. And this is seconds or sometimes minutes, as opposed to hours or days that come from most traditional analytics and databases. So this is a critical, complete, end-to-end solution where you will see different pieces of it in the market. You'll see people who have a variety of connectivity. You will see people who have fast reporting, although not near as fast as what we have. And you'll see some who can load, although not near as fast as what we have in the Rush Analytics stack. So if you combine the best variety that was on the prior slide with the fastest load times, with the fastest reporting, then you're able to go back to that first slide, back to the $2 trillion, back to the, is it too big, is it too much, is it too fast, is it too, is it too many different sorts, types of data. Is that the reason why you're not leveraging it? And the answer is it can be solved, and it can be solved with one stack, with one combined product stack, which is up on the slide in front of you right now. So then we talk about taking action, and this is where it really gets fun, because this is something that anybody can relate to. And I was talking to somebody the other day that builds software for on top of a Force platform for contractors, and they said, well, you know what? I don't really know how big data can impact me. I'm just a software company that sells to contractors. And then we started to talk a little bit about it, and we said, well, what if you were able to pull data from your system, which arguably probably isn't that much for the common plumber or roofer, but what if you were able to combine that data with open or available data, say weather data? And if you were to say, we're in Austin, Texas, so we're kind of used to hailstorms here, and what if you were able to say, if this weather reporting service was to report hail damage in a certain geography or a certain neighborhood, then I would like to automatically set a rule on my phone or iPad or whatever device I have. I'd like to set a rule that says I want to ping that against my marketing database for that neighborhood. This is in my region, and I want to send them an email that says we'll come out and give an estimate today. So that before everybody else wakes up and figures out how they're going to go out and put flyers on people's windshields, you've already answered and put your name in the queue. So that's at the lowest common denominator of a roofing business with 3 people. And how can they leverage big data? Well, the data's out there, and there's a lot to be gained at the biggest level companies all the way down to the smallest. And this is one example. We have tons of other examples that we can talk about as far as how people will take action on their data. And some of them are just as scary as they are impressive sometimes. I mean, you could think about going to an HR outsourcer who maybe does payroll or tax, HR benefits, and you could look at all of the data that you have about that person that comes into your system so that you could process it, and you could offer a service where you combine that with open data that's available from LinkedIn and or salary.com and or Kronos from a timesheets perspective, and you could probably, using some type of algorithms, predict when somebody is going to quit within a certain degree of certainty based on the fact that they've updated their profile on LinkedIn, their salary is not comparable to other people with the same job in the same area, and they've had a cadence of absences in their workspace that's not consistent with the prior 3 years of work compared to all of the data they already have about their payroll and their rates and how much they got on their last performance review. So kind of scary, but for those who consider attrition to be a problem and want to prevent it, it's a value-added service for an HR outsourcing service provider to be able to add that to the stack of services that they can offer, pulling both from their data warehouse as well as from other available public social data. This is one that my boss happens to use with us, which is, I want to know what's happening inside of our opportunities, and when something changes from a certain amount to another amount or above a certain threshold, then I would like to know about it. And these are triggers that we use internally but are used by hundreds of people as well, and this is just tied to sales, but certainly could be tied to any number of SaaS-related or social-related services. And the number of possibilities is endless. And when you talk about those trend lines, and when you talk about, well, isn't this, aren't people doing predictive analytics, or haven't they been doing it for a while, or haven't people been building data warehouses for a while? The answer is yes, but so this is not a discussion where we're talking about replacing anything necessarily, and this is a whole new way to rip everything that you know out, but rather, how do you leverage all the things you know? How do you get access to all the things you know? How do you process them in a timely manner and perform some analytics against that to be able to take action from? And how do you put it into business users' hands so that they can compare and combine and set triggers or events that trigger some action on their side, all the way to the business level for any salesperson, any marketing person, any product person, any roofing contractor? How can you do this in such a simple way that it becomes useful across the world for anybody? And that's the true power of what's going on with big data and the bigger picture for what it could mean for all of us. The people who are thinking about this right now probably didn't get to leadership positions by not thinking bigger picture. So I can't take credit for them necessarily thinking bigger picture because of us, but I will take partial credit for helping them along the way. So our company works with, we already mentioned Intuit and Salesforce, we'll talk a bit about that in a second, but all of the leaders in the space are constantly thinking, what can I do and what service can I provide? And it's funny because some of them started out by sending and doing marketing automation or price optimization or accounting, et cetera, or HR outsourcing, and quickly they've realized, maybe it's customer sentiment, maybe they've realized that it's not about the campaigns that they can run through their system. The value that they have is that they run thousands and thousands and thousands of campaigns, and they know what campaigns are working and what are not based on time, based on region, based on message, and they can sell that information, de-identified information, to other smaller companies and for an amount. They can go to a company with 100 people and sell them what they know for some amount because they've done thousands and thousands and thousands of tests. And what they're realizing is the data they have is even more important than the service they offer in many cases. I talked a little bit about Salesforce and Intuit. These guys understand cloud. They have budgets. They grow fast. They have market share. They understand it. In this particular case, they looked at what they do best and they looked at what we do best, and they combined the two to continue their dominance in their market share. And the self-serve piece I talked about kind of speaks for itself. Behind the scenes, doing all the heavy lifting on the data is Action's Data Cloud and some of the integration and connectivity that we talked about a little earlier. The cloud that we have is 6 years old now and is built on Amazon. So it's completely elastic. If any of our customers did a massive campaign and their growth exploded while we were on this call, well, that would be fine because it's it will automatically span out to as many machines as it needs to, and then contract again if that volume goes down. We have passed our SSA 16 audit, which is great, which is no fun, by the way, but is important for those who want to be able to run things through your cloud from a data perspective, and gets us a big chunk of the way closer to the ISO 27000 certification as well. Our Galaxy community allows us to do more than we could ever possibly do with the number of people that we have, even though we have people worldwide. The ability to have other people who know domains build connectivity and maps and processes and host those up and support those on the Galaxy community is huge. In fact, I noticed that I typed into Galaxy before this call. I typed VectorWise in, and this Galaxy is becoming the way that we serve up the hundreds of connectors that we have. And we already have 3 different connectors into VectorWise, loaders of various types into VectorWise loaded on Galaxy as of this week. So that's how fast we can move and publish those options. And then Maestro, which I won't demo today because we just doesn't look like we have enough time, is a way for you to go in. You know, every company in the world that has some service, or whether software as a service or SaaS as a service, where friction to the number of to integrating with some endpoint is an issue, should have or use Maestro, and they should be able to say on that call where their customer or prospect says, "Can you integrate with this system?" Whether it's Salesforce or NetSuite or SAP or Great Plains or JD Edwards, they should be able to say, do you have 5 minutes? Do you have a browser and do you have 5 minutes? We will let you do it. We'll show you on your own browser, and we'll let you log in and do some basic mapping on that data, which would reduce the friction in their sales cycle. So I think I've run out of time, but I was kind of rolling there. So I'm assuming that there will be some questions, but I appreciate the time, Eric, and I'll hand it back to you.
Yes, indeed, and a lot of great content there. Good job of demonstrating the sort of depth and breadth of what's happening here, and it's impressive, I have to say. We've been watching this space now. I've been watching this space for 13 years or so, and watching the rate of change increase has been interesting, but I have to say in the last 2 to 3 years, especially in the last 18 months, there has been just a bewildering pace of change. So with that, I believe, Robin, you should have control now. Just click anywhere on that slide and use the down arrow on your keyboard, and you should be able to move the slides.
Okay, I think that was me moving the slides. Yes, it was.
Actually, not yet. I think, Rebecca, you need to hand it over to the other Robin Bloor. There you go. There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, my alter ego. Oh, that was interesting. Okay. Well, this is an unusual presentation compared to most of the briefing rooms, from Actyon. Simply because what we're talking about here is a whole software stack that covers an awful lot of things in depth, an awful lot of things end to end as well. So it's kind of a bewildering breadth of things, and it's even more bewildering, I think, simply because it's been assembled so quickly. I mean, you would say it's not been assembled in a few days, but it's certainly the roll-up in terms of companies or technologies that have been put together has really been quite fast. So I thought I'd talk about the BI latency issue, and I thought I'd give this kind of perspective. BI in general, of course, involves an awful lot of different activities, but you can kind of break it down in terms of the latencies that matter. A lot of BI is about discovery. Some of it isn't. Some of it's just about being reporting and things like that. But a lot of it's about discovery, and that kind of discovery we would typify as being the work of a data analyst. So one of the things that as an organization one would be concerned about is that one's data analysts, from the point of time that they embarked upon a project to the point of time that they got a result which was usable, you would care how long that period is. And I'm referring to that as a data analyst latency. And certainly I've come across various data analyst projects that went on for years looking at data, and some a small period of time. So not all of these projects are the same. Some of them are looking at vast amounts of data and looking at very specific targets and can take a long time. But in general, they always have taken a long time, and that's actually coming down quite dramatically. Secondly, in a lot of situations, after a data analyst has actually discovered some useful actionable relationships within data, you often have to have some developer activity to make that real. And that depends upon the environment that you're actually using, can be fast or slow. Sometimes a data analyst can do something and then it has to be partially redeveloped to actually put into action. Then you have the deploy period where, given that you've actually built something that you've tested and you're happy with, then the operational area has to actually deploy it, and that itself is a latency. And then there's a time to use, which is really, if a BI capability is too slow, then your users complain. So there's user latency. So what I see, and the reason that I kind of started looking at it this way, and I only started looking at it this way in the past few months, is that I see all of these latencies coming in. And sometimes coming in at a bewildering rate, in the sense that, I've seen time to do just, let's say, a particular data extract and pre-configured analysis come down from days to minutes with some of the technologies that are employed. And Actyon has some of these technologies, so it's an interesting company in that respect. In terms of the cast of characters, this is the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. But the people that we're interested in, or the people that we're trying to keep happy or satisfied, are the data analysts, the IT developers, and the operational people in the data center, and the BI user which is a neat fit given that there was only 4 people at the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. The process, and I've tried to represent this as simple as possible, but it's not entirely simple. But the full end-to-end process, whether you're actually doing a data analytical project, or whether you're going just in some way or other accessing a BI capability, will involve at least some of these steps. So the steps are kind of interesting. There's a data access step. If you can't connect to the data, then you've got work to do to connect to the data. There's a data preparation step, which can involve data cleansing as well as data transformation. For data analytical work, there will be a modeling step. There will certainly be an analytical step. Whatever you're doing, there will be some kind of calculation to get to a result. In terms of any given project that's been started, there will be a deployment step, and then there's the execution. And this process applies to pretty much all areas of BI to a certain degree. And the process applies both to the development stage and to the implementation stage of any kind of BI project. And sometimes it's a very long thing, and sometimes it's a very short thing. It depends on what you're doing. The modeling stage is only relevant. This is the third point here. The modeling stage is only relevant when you are actually in an data analyst process, so that kind of disappears when you go to deployment and implementation. The cry that comes from pretty much all the users is that they want complete self-service, and this is a really difficult thing to actually deliver, because when a user says they want self-service, they want to be able to pick out the various capabilities they use, but they also sometimes want to connect to data that they don't easily have available to now, at the moment. And the data analyst or data scientist really would prefer if they could just point at data and gather it without there being any need for them to interact with IT. So there's a full-out cry for as much self-service as possible, and I think that's part of the picture nowadays. The point about data analyst work is just that we divide BI into hindsight, oversight, insight, and foresight. And the insight part is what is discovery, and pretty much most of that is done by data analysts. So the data analyst is really at the heart of all of this, which is why if you're going to promise some kind of end-to-end capability throughout the whole of the BI space, if you aren't catering for the data analysts, then you don't have it, because they are fundamental. They're, if you like, the creators of the possibility before it ever hits software. Now, the only other thing, and I kind of wanted to say this simply because Actyon has VectorWise as a database, and VectorWise is one of the few products, I only know of 3, that actually use vector processing, and I thought, seeing as there wasn't any technical presentation going to come from Actyon, I thought I would just actually mention what vector processing actually is and why it's a kind of an important thing. If you think in terms of column stores and column store databases, which VectorWise is, but also Paracel is, then they pull data off in columns. You can think of a column mathematically as a vector, and you can apply algebra to columns. Well, it just so happens that in the CPU, the CPUs, the x86 CPUs that Intel and AMD deliver, they have vector instructions. So the thing about vector processing is that it actually creates a data flow, and you can see this on the right-hand side, right from the disk through the memory into L3 cache, into L2 cache, into level 1 cache, into all the levels of cache as a vector. And because it does that, and because the cores can actually execute vector instructions, it makes it dramatically fast. And if you want to, but I'm not going to talk about it, if you want to look at the different latencies between, data processed in core and then dragged from L1 cache, L2 cache, L3 cache, or from memory, you see that cache isn't anywhere between 10 and 100 times faster than memory. So you can get some extraordinary speed from vector processing. And that's really all I had to say about that. I will now ask Lance some questions, but I think probably the most important thing for for you to speak to, Lance, is that I presented latencies in a particular way. And if you could, in some way or other, speak to how the whole stack that Actyon has addresses these particular latencies, I'd be interested to hear you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Robin. The world is not very patient these days about anything, and the data is coming faster and faster, and from more sources even while we were on this call. And so, if you say, well, we'll build a project, or hey, we'll build a 2-year roadmap or a 6-month roadmap, or we'll put it into a project plan, or we'll hire a team, or there just isn't enough time. The opportunity comes and it goes. And those who can act the fastest are going to win. And from an analyst perspective, that might be, I need to figure out how to make sense of this data, and or capture the data, and or run some type of analytics on it, and I need to do it quickly because the opportunity is now. The window of opportunity is now. And so the faster that you can help people from the design time and the capture side and the load and then actually in the end the query side, the faster, the easier that you can make that, the better the chance that they will have that they will have a chance to capture the opportunity first. And you see it so many times. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It can be people who are trying to collect debts, people who are trying to do price optimization. There are certain trends that happen sometimes in the middle of the day that you need to be able to act on. And if you say, well, we'll get a project or a team together and figure it out, then and somebody else can act on it that day, then you lose and they win. And if that happens enough times, then you go away and they don't. And so certainly from the design time perspective, we've always focused on how do we make this the easiest, most seamless process for people to both learn and execute. And that is before I even get to the reporting side of if I'm able to do that, can I report it in a fast enough time? Can I get the information back so that I can make a change while I'm at lunch or while I go take a break instead of over the weekend or overnight? From a deployment latency, it's the same process. It's gone from how can I put all of this together and do I have to go get machines or put up different servers and do I have to allocate space and get air conditioning and power and get all of that approved, and the moment's gone. And so cloud, the amount of compute that's available today on the cloud is important. And so the faster you're able to come to leverage data and get some type of answer immediately. I can spin up servers as we speak, massive machines at pennies an hour, within the next 5 minutes, and that's just something that we couldn't do before. So deployment is important, and the fact that we can scale on the cloud or be deployed on the cloud seamlessly is important. And then user performance it has to work, and I know that it seems like it's a no-brainer, but if you're talking about sometimes millions of dollars of opportunity and maybe in the roofing contractor, thousands of dollars, this is something that you can't say, oh well, it didn't work. Better luck next time. Sometimes people's jobs are online. Sometimes their window of opportunity is there. And if there's something occurring in the world that they can take advantage of to help the world or their business or their bottom line, then performance and uptime and SLAs and those things are important. And being able to scale is critical. It's not always necessary at the beginning, but you also don't want to. You don't want to start over again. You want something you can start with, deploy in an incremental way, but scale as big as you need to be over time.
Okay. Well, the other question that I wanted, well, you had a lot of questions, but we're not going to get time for them. So I would just, Actyon Galaxy sounds like a very interesting initiative to me in a number of ways, but do you have any stats that you could give us as to how big this is, how many capabilities are up there, how many people are using it? Because it's, you know, a marketplace is a marketplace, and if marketplace becomes very active, it can be very, very, well, it can help, obviously, you, but it can also help the users.
What it does is it allows us to scale way beyond any number of people we could ever hire. And so there are people around the world who have domain expertise on various systems and on various data and on various things like the data validation and data quality. And these people, and then there are tons of people who have needs, and just providing a place where they can map, where they can find one another was critical. So we have hundreds of different add-ons and connectors and apps and processes that are available with support and with help and with videos available on Galaxy today. So that's one way. The other thing about Galaxy that's important is that some people want to take that and rebrand it as their own Galaxy. So take, for example, somebody who delivers, I'll use a large logistics company for an example. Maybe they have to go set up the ability to do packing and shipping. Maybe they need to set up the ability to do to onboard data from their various systems. Well, whoever is able to do that the fastest is going to win. And if those people are able to leverage the fact that one of their counterparts has done the work already on another coast to implement or integrate data from, pick a system, J.D. Edwards, onboarded into that particular system, and they can go leverage that and maybe even improve upon it and then load it back again, it means that their business goes faster, that their friction is reduced, and that their competitive advantage is improved. And so both the worldwide use of Galaxy as well as a rebranded use for business to business of the platform is these are both critical use cases, and we have seen it both in the number of things that are hosted, the way that we can deliver connectivity from the channel, from the world, or from ourselves, as well as the ability for people to find solutions on their own. And the results that I mentioned earlier on the drop in support as a result of that is good. Adding to a breadth of connectivity and improving customer sat and delivering to customers faster in a self-serve way, these are all things that are critical to today's world.
Okay, well, I think I'll pass you to Eric, who will no doubt have questions from the audience.
Yeah, we got a couple good ones. I know we have a hard stop at the top of the hour, so let me just kind of dive into some of these. I pushed this slide up here because I want to show this whole environment once again, and obviously you guys have focused very heavily on cloud-based integration, and we all know there is this sort of reverse gravitational pull going on these days with data going up into the cloud and then from different cloud environments all over the place, quite frankly. And you've got, of course, Amazon, which is a leader in the space, but you've also got Windows, Microsoft with their Azure cloud.
Breaking up somehow.
And then you've got other things going on.
Participant lines muted.
And I just want to understand, what are some of the challenges around cloud-to-cloud type integration? Let's say somebody deploys in the Amazon cloud some of these types of solutions, and then there's some kind of an issue going on, and you need to move it. How painful is that experience if someone has done things the way you guys recommend them doing them?
So I think, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay, good. So I think there are a couple different answers in there. One is just making it easy, reducing that friction for people to be able to solve problems without having to install or provision systems and just to be able to go get started on something and solve some problem quickly is important, and cloud makes that possible in a cost-effective way. We can have an enterprise stack, an enterprise integration stack that normally should run $100,000 to buy and implement, both in hardware and software and services, and now you can get it spun up in 10 minutes. I mean, that's the difference in the speed that cloud affords. And so that's the first part. The second part, as far as cloud to cloud is concerned, is people who want to develop using that robust stack that I just said, but they need to do it in a cost-effective way, and they need to do sharing, and they need to be able to provide security, and they need to be able to give role-based access, and they need to be able to build integrations that might be cloud to cloud, and they might expand from cloud to on-prem, and they need to be able to get stats, and they need to be able to see logs and get alerts, and just have an uptime SLA that meets their business requirements, or maybe they lose their job if they don't. And so we're the only ones that have the ability to put that enterprise stack on the cloud, provisioned in a multi-tenant way that allows people to keep their costs low while both trying out and managing. And it doesn't just limit them to cloud only. It allows them, if they need to expand on-prem, to expand and draw from other systems that might not be cloud, and report on all of the above. So for us and for the customer demand that was out there, it was help us solve this problem in an incremental way where we can do it quickly and scale as big as we need to scale over the next 5 years. I see different pieces of it. I see people who have cloud, but it doesn't scale or it's not secure. I see people who have something that's enterprise-wide, but it's not cost-effective and/or fast, which is the reason why they want to go to cloud in the first place, or secure enough for them to count on. And we built it right, and as a unified stack that can be leveraged for the easiest of tasks, like the bidirectional 10-minute process I mentioned with Salesforce and QuickBooks, all the way to the heaviest, biggest processes and implementations you can imagine.
Right, and I threw up this slide too, again, just to give people some perspective on the ecosystem involved here. And obviously, there's a lot going on in this particular slide. And I think I know in the media world, Actyon caught a lot of people by surprise by jumping up to the plate and grabbing ParaXL shortly after ParaXL announced that whole deal with Amazon Redshift, and what a big deal that was. Can you just talk for a minute about, and I know you already talked about this a little bit, but about the difference between when to use Vectorwise versus when to use ParaXL, and what kind of the use cases those are?
You know, we sat down. We were in the both in the due diligence and then in the company integration process, and the delineation became very clear. And so admittedly, salespeople on all sides were pleased that there wasn't any kind of battle to be fought on overlap. Vectorwise is as fast as you can get in an SMP world up to a certain threshold of data, and is the perfect fit for tons of companies already, and a perfect fit for a lot of companies that are emerging as we speak, where ParaXL for scale, where it scales out, where it maximizes the use of a chipset to give you back record-breaking answers for Vectorwise, whereas ParaXL has record-breaking performance and scales out. So for something as big or a scale as Redshift or any other massive data and reporting and analytics needs, then ParaXL is the perfect fit for that, which might be higher up in the overall enterprise needs and volumes.
Okay, good. And where can folks go to find out some more information about this? Obviously, you've got the Galaxy offering. Any other recommendations for where to educate themselves about what's possible?
If you went to Actyon.com, that would be a great place to start. You'll get a lot more information, videos, papers, references, case studies. If you want more, I promise you that by asking for help, our marketing people will appreciate that and get you to the right person who can provide more data and more assistance. There are communities and knowledge bases across the board specific to the various pieces of the stack where there are other domain experts that might be companies like yours or companies like the people that are on this call to ask questions of their peers. So there's countless amounts of ways to get help, but I would start with Actyon.com.
Okay, folks, this does conclude another webcast here with the Briefing Room. Thank you so much for your time and attention. We really appreciate it. Lots of exciting stuff happening. There's never a dull moment in this business, folks. Thanks again, and we'll catch up to you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.